Jorge Sampaoli's Olympique de Marseille are back where they belong, near the top of the Ligue 1 table. It has been a tumultuous year for their club, both on and off of the pitch. In fact, on two occasions, those two worlds have collided. Hey there, I'm Adrian and welcome to Rabona TV. Welcome back to all of those who are subscribed. Elite stuff right there. Today, we'll be looking at Marseille because they're an interesting club with an interesting manager in Jorge Sampaoli. A crazy manager for a crazy fan base that turns the Stade Velodrome into an absolute cauldron week in, week out. And hey, if you want to watch Marseille, their Le Classique rivals PSG, or any other Ligue 1 action, our sponsors for this video and friends at Fanatiz have got you covered. They're back again! Fanatiz offers you the cheapest way to watch beIN Sports, aka all of Ligue 1, all of Messi and Neymar, when he isn't injured, of course. All of Jonathan David and Timothy Weah, all of Jorge Sampaoli, and the madness of the Stade Velodrome at Marseille. Plus, don't forget about all of Fanatiz's unmatched South and Central American coverage. We're talking all of Brasileirão, including both Serie A and B, all Liga Argentina matches, plus access to some Liga Portugal matches, Turkish Super League, and you can watch all of these leagues on any device you like, Chromecast, Fire Stick, your phone, tablet, computer, smart TV, wherever, and catch matches whenever with their 72 hours of video on demand in case you're late to kickoff. All of these leagues and features, and it is yours for an insanely low $7.99 Canadian per month. That's Canadian, remember, Monopoly money. I'm Canadian, guys, relax. I know our money is beautiful. But right now, you can get Fanatiz for 50% off. That's all of these leagues and competitions for just $4 Canadian per month. That's an insane deal. So use the link in the description, buy yourself or a loved one the gift of football this year at a very, very low limited time price. All right, guys, thanks to Fanatiz for partnering with us once again, and let's get to the content. Now, I have an entire video dedicated to this Marseille disaster from last season if you want a more in-depth version of the events, but here's the quick Spark Notes version of it, just so we're all on the same page. Andre Villas-Boas seemed a little bit indifferent to his job at Marseille back in January of this year. Various statements where he spoke about how Marseille were, quote, weak and shit in the Champions League, and how that is simply their status in the Champions League. Statements alluded to the fact that important people within the club were not on his side, and how with his contract ending at the end of the season, he didn't expect a renewal based on how things were going. The end of the transfer window came, and Villas-Boas unleashed a bombshell, or three, at a press conference, saying he knew nothing about Olivier Ntcham's signing, and he had previously said no to signing said player, how he didn't know that one of his players, Nemanja Radonjic, was leaving the club on loan, etc. Basically, there was a massive disconnect between himself and the higher-ups, and these words must have incensed the Marseille Ultras further, as they stormed the Marseille training center. Ultimately, one of the lasting quotes from AVB was, quote, I don't want to be fired, I only want to leave because of differences. I have a lot of respect for Jacques-Henri, Hérault, but there they touched my professionalism and it is not possible. Shortly after these statements, and after the big meltdown, he was released, with Marseille saying, quote, Olympique de Marseille announces the dismissal of Andre Villas-Boas. This decision became inevitable because of repetition of actions and attitudes which seriously harmed the institution and its employees who defend it daily. And so a new manager was requested, one whose fiery persona matches that of the Stade Velodrome stands. Sampaoli was signed by Marseille, and it's safe to say that his ego was bruised ever so slightly prior to that, at least outside of South America. Why? Because most outside of South America will remember Sampaoli, perhaps unfairly, as the man who threw away Argentina's 2018 World Cup as they were quite difficult to watch at times. They felt like less of a cohesive squad and more like a bunch of individuals who have met for the first time on the playing pitch, but managed to get a couple of important results thanks to the individual talents they boast within said squad. His intense football wasn't a great fit for the national team that boasted the oldest squad at Russia 2018. But even prior to the far less than perfect Argentina outing, Sampaoli had built up quite the reputation in South American football. He won 3 league titles with Universidad de Chile back in Chile, as well as a Copa Sudamericana in what was a 3-year blitz with the club, before taking over the Chilean national team job from Marcelo Bielsa, and he went on to win Copa America against his future employers and his home country, Argentina, in 2015. As he guided Chile's golden generation to their first Copa America title in the country's history. Bielsa is actually a big figure in the story of Sampaoli, as he is often referred to as a Bielsa disciple, given how he tends to have a similar outlook on football and tactics as the current Leeds United manager. And the name Bielsa came up in his February 2021 press conference with Marseille. Sampaoli said, quote, "Bielsa is a reference for many. I feel close to him in the style of play, but I'm not going to try to be like him. I will do things my way without imitating him. There are idols that are impossible to imitate." We'll get back to Sampaoli's style of play in the next section of this video, but for now, let's focus on Sampaoli's managerial career beyond Argentina and beyond Chilean club football. Sampaoli signing with Marseille is actually his second bite of the apple when it comes to European football. His previous attempt, back in 2016, the year after he won Copa America with Chile, Sampaoli signed on with Sevilla, and things were looking rosy early on. In fact, in January, they sat in second and were through to the knockout round to the Champions League. And of course, Sampaoli was the one who ended Real Madrid's 40-match unbeaten run that season. A feather in his cap, of sorts, for sure. But a not-so-secret rumor about Sampaoli being lined up and agreeing to take over the Argentina national side certainly would have disrupted their season a bit, and Sevilla fizzled out with a fourth-placed finish. Now, we already mentioned how Argentina went not so great, or not how he would have liked to have seen his quote-unquote dream job go, that's for sure. And following the World Cup, he took his talents to Brazil to manage Santos and Atlético Mineiro. At Santos, he received a lot of plaudits for the attractive attacking football he played, leading Santos to second in Serie A, whereas his time at Atlético Mineiro was less of a success despite the tempting draw of Atletico's new ownership promising a war chest of funds to conquer Brazil. They're an incredibly rich club, and they conquered Brazil this season, actually. It didn't end incredibly well for Atlético Mineiro, however, as Sampaoli's wild 2-3-5 formation made the most of their attacking talents, scoring boatloads of goals, but suffering in defense. At the end of the season, Sampaoli requested his contract be terminated, and terminated it was. About 2 months later, his phone rang. Jacques-Henri Ayrault, the former Marseille president, was on the other end of the line, asking Sampaoli if he would be interested in a return to Europe via Marseille, to which Sampaoli accepted. Marseille have had fiery Argentinians at the helm before. Of course, you'll remember Marcelo Bielsa's time with the club, in which supporters will look back upon as perhaps the last time they really felt something at the club. The football was exciting. For 13 consecutive match days, Marseille were at the top in Ligue 1, before a run of 11 matches saw them win just twice, and thus relinquished their lead and plummeted down to 4th, where they settled. Of course, Marseille had to run to the Europa League final as well since Bielsa, but for the most part, they've been guilty of underachieving under Ayrault's watch. Jacques-Henri Ayrault, who was the president of Marseille from 2016 to the end of February of 2021, and whom the Ultras were not a fan of, left his role of president to become part of the supervisory board at the club in February of 2021. His final contributions at the club saw Sampaoli take over, which perhaps the Marseille faithful will give him some credit for, some will probably discredit it and say he had nothing to do with it. In his place, Pablo Longoria took over as club president, and he has endeared himself to the Marseille faithful far more. For one, the signings have been better recently, as he has set up Sampaoli with the tools he needs to succeed. For example, Gerson, a highly rated Brazilian, arrived for 25 million euros, as well as making the loan moves for Milik and Balerdi permanent. On top of that, further loans came into the club via Cengiz Ünder, Amin Harit, William Saliba, and Matteo Guendouzi. These new signings, coupled with the pieces that were already in place at the club, have taken well to Sampaoli's approach. His shape makes people scratch their heads, unsure if it should be seen as a 3-5-2 or more of a 2-3-3-2, with plenty of intensity in this young squad. Sifting through their full squad list, there are only 3 players above the age of 27 currently. Club captain Steve Mandanda, Dimitri Payet, and veteran defender Alvaro Gonzalez. Mandanda and Gonzalez's appearances have been limited in comparison to their teammates this season, as Sampaoli ball starts to take hold. The management of the club has done well in collaboration with Sampaoli in that they have brought in players that fit the manager's vision. Saliba has impressed at center back, his ability on the ball really shining through. Guendouzi, while his temperament on the pitch was divisive at Arsenal, it's right at home in the Stade Velodrome, where passion and intensity are welcome, not only by the fans, but by the manager of the club as well. Not to mention, people forget that Guendouzi's capable of being a pretty slick midfielder, and he isn't all, errant tackles and errors. As far as results go, they are certainly promising for Marseille. Their attack has faltered at times this season, we'll get to that in a sec, but their defense remains the best in the league after 17 matches played. one less than the majority given the match versus Nice that was abandoned, of course. They control matches well, with the second highest average possession in the league behind only PSG. Where Marseille has a lot of work to do is absolutely in the finishing department. Their shots on target percentage is the lowest in the entire league, despite ranking second in the league for shot creating actions per 90 minutes. It's a bit baffling, isn't it? But perhaps the secret spice to all of this is the cohesion between the manager, the board, and the fan base. As mentioned before, the Stade Velodrome is known for having a cauldron-like, almost South American feel to it, given the atmosphere that's fostered in the stadium by the Marseille supporters. Now, they once again have a manager that not only is expressive and ambitious with his tactics, but has a fiery persona to match that of the club itself. There will be no surprise to have seen Sampaoli right in the middle of the various scuffles Marseille have been involved in this season, getting right amongst the action and backing his players. That means something to the players, and it absolutely means something to the supporters. This is a bit of a weird example, but back when Klopp was hired by Liverpool, and before that at Dortmund, he spoke of how the role the fans play in the club's success cannot be underplayed, how there needs to be a unique synergy between the manager, players, and supporters. And if they all pull in the right direction, then they can be successful. With Marseille signing Sampaoli, with the newly developing synergy between himself, his players, the boardroom under Longoria, that's important, and the fervent fans, you get the feeling that Marseille may just be onto something, and may just be back to being a competitive side again. I hope you enjoyed this look at Marseille and their explosive manager, Jorge Sampaoli. Remember, if you want to watch them week in, week out, then our partners at Fanatiz have got you covered. Link in the description, of course. Aside from that, I thank you for spending some time with me here today, and we hope to see you in the next video. Ciao.